And welcome, Rugby Rant fans. It's Thursday night. It's the big guy. It's the hammer. You know what it is. It's the Rugby Rant episode of the show. We got a good one for you. The big guy and the hammer couldn't be down in DC for the All Blacks match at FedEx Field. So what we did was we recruited two guys who were actually down there live, Alex Carlson and Mike Perrazini. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, we're going to get some perspective from guys who are actually there. You're going to get obviously me and Rob's perspective because let's be honest, we're who you came to see. And before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about our friends at canibrands.com. Me and Rob use this product often. The Can I Fresh is something I speak about often. Middle of the day, having trouble, pop 8 or 9 squirts of the Can I Fresh from that little aerosol can that fits right in your pocket or your shave kit if you're traveling. And boom, I'm ready to go for my second half of the day. Or you can use the little droppers again, 8 or 9 drops from the droplet, and you're ready to go. I know Rob likes the Can I Boost in the morning, right, Rob?
Yep. Yeah, I use the Can I Boost in the morning to get me a lift, especially if I'm going to get that workout in the morning. I've been trying to run 3 days a week. So sometimes it's difficult to do so, especially after taping at night, late into the wee hours. You need something to get you going. And then that, Can I Fresh is great in the afternoon if I want to get a quick workout in the afternoon. So it's good stuff, especially for old guys like me who are pushing past middle age. Need a little something to give me a kick in the afternoon.
Hey, they're great products. I'm sure Preston can use some Can I Mend after kind of splitting his hand wide open after scoring his second try against Marion. Congratulations, Little Hammer. 2 spectacular tries for you. But you get all these products.
Versatility there, didn't he?
Absolutely. All these products are THC free. They're non-habit forming, which is something that, which is one of the reasons why I like this company. That's near and dear to my heart. So please go to canibrands.com and use the code RANT25 for 25% off your entire purchase. No matter what you're getting, they have little kits. You could do a Can I Mend, a Can I Fresh, and a Can I Boost in one little kit. 25% off. Use the code RANT25. Any orders over $49 are free shipping in the continental United States. Again, please check out canibrands.com. And to get 25% off your entire purchase, use the code RANT25. So before we get into the topic, Rob, I'm just going to go over the rules real quick. So I'm acting as the referee, as the sir today. Our buddy Ty Braga couldn't be here with us. And even though Mike and Alex have been here before and kind of know the rules already, I'm just going to go through it. So each person's going to have 2 minutes to rant about the topic that we've chosen. And then, there's certain things involved in rugby, right, guys? Little things. One of them is called Rob.
It's called the cheese.
The cheese. So if somebody goes over their 2 minutes or has a general infraction that the big guy doesn't like, the big sir, we'll call myself now, you will get the cheese. That's your warning. If you go over your limit twice or you do something so egregious that you're going to get a little bit of wine with that cheese, you'll get a red card. And the big sir will take you off screen. So the topic for today, fellas, obviously we were talking about it, is the Eagles All Blacks match. Now, 104-14, right? 104-14.
That's correct. Yep. Final
score. First time we actually we've scored tries against the All Blacks ever, playing them. So that's a tip in the cap for us, regardless of how you feel about the outcome. Played at FedEx Field. There was about 40,000 people there. And just to be as a reminder, New Zealand is still not letting people leave the country. So I thoroughly believe if people were allowed to travel internationally, the New Zealanders would have traveled internationally to go to this match. FedEx Field is a nice field, and I'm sure we'll hear some more bird's eye accounts from these two guys. But I just want to point that out too, which is going, it's like going back to the Irish match. The reason they canceled the Irish match, because the Irish aren't going to be able to travel, and that's going to kind of stop the ticket sales. So, but we rolled with 40,000 deep. Watching on Flow, I thought it was good. It looked like a good atmosphere and things like that. But like I said, we're going to give everybody 2 minutes, and then the big guy's going to pick the winner at the end of this. So, Alex, your 2 minutes start now.
Okay, well, thanks again for having me, and it was a great weekend. Win, lose, or draw would have been cool too, right? Snowstorm, anything at that time to kind of slow the All Blacks attack down. It was amazing to see all these ruggers. Everybody made it happen, and to stay positive throughout this whole thing is the fact that it's another match whereas like a year ago, nobody was playing rugby and nobody was together. So you get a bunch of people from all over the U.S. coming in to support maybe the All Blacks more than the Eagles, but either way, everybody got together, and I think that's a huge part of it. So to kind of shift it from positive to constructive, it's time to kind of close that umbrella of BS I think we live under as USA Rugby fans, and it's time to get laser sharp focused. We have a big match as a nation coming up in 2022, and there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of people that want accountability. They want accountability from USA Rugby in grassroots growth, and they want accountability from USA Rugby and what this team's going to do to kind of get over that hump and kind of shed all these little monikers of the sleeping giant, or we're not good enough to be a tier 1 nation. So there's a lot of positives to take from it, from Osberger's try to just the boys not giving up over 80 minutes. But I think that's the biggest thing in my rant is being positive and being constructive. It's time for USA Rugby to plant that guidon and plant it deeply and decide what we're going to stand on, what's our culture going to be like, what's our principles moving forward into 2022, and how we're going to attack Chile, because that's step A. We can't get to step B and to be a top 10 nation until we attack. That's the principle of play. Attack, go forward.
Yeah, definitely right. I mean, I think we talked about it with Bryce Campbell on Monday. Going into this match against Chile, we have to get that America's 2 slot. There's no doubt about it. We can't rely on repertoire. We have to rely on beating Chile and getting that number 2 spot to get in the Rugby World Cup, and then do some, work on doing some business in 2023. Atmosphere. I'm glad you like the atmosphere. I don't think any rugby match I've ever been to has had a bad atmosphere, even if it's, not a lot of fans, if it's a small club style match, it's the atmosphere is what you make it. So I think it's, it was a good time for everybody. Friend of the show, Matt McCarthy, he was posting all over the place with some of my fellow Rooster Boosters, mine and Mike's fellow Rooster Boosters. I saw a ton of people. Friend of the show, Sue Parks, was all over it. Had some great pictures. Sue Parks had great pictures of Nate, Nick, and the Butch together, and sent it to me, which was really nice. And you saw guys like Ben Bonasso just taking pictures with everybody in the stands and signing autographs and doing what rugby players always do. So it was nice to see. Grand Poobah, buddy. Let's go.
Yeah, I was going to say, first things first, it was great that we scored, our first tries ever against the All Blacks. And that's really all I want to kind of talk about the game itself. I wanted to focus on, the ancillary things. This was, USA's chance to show that we could put on a good rugby show, and we had great rugby atmosphere ahead of our Rugby World Cup bids that we just announced. And so that was kind of our, plan to show everyone, hey, we have good rugby culture. We can get fans in the seats, and everyone will have fun. I think there was around 40,000 people that showed up. I would have liked a bit more. I think they were expecting around 50,000 as well. It seemed like there was a million All Blacks fans, which is something that I personally have an issue with. We're in USA. Yeah, it's USA. There are a lot of USA All Blacks fans. I think, if you're a USA, rugby player, the acceptable, uniform that you should be wearing is your club uniform, or, some red and blue. Like, come on, cheer on the boys.
Lay it down, Mikey. Lay it down.
Yeah, I was going to say, come on, really, we're here for, the Eagles. I understand the All Blacks are, the pinnacle, but you're being kind of a front runner. I think this is always going to be a test for the MLR players. Everyone was talking about how, this is outside of the international window. And so we didn't get those international players, but this was the test for the MLR players. We have created this, this league as an opportunity to, feed into USA Rugby in the hopes of eventually, all of USA Rugby possibly coming from the MLR. So this was kind of a test to see how they were doing with that. I think, they performed admirably. Like I said, scored the first 2 tries that ever happened against the All Blacks. And this wasn't a shabby All Blacks team either. But I think, there was a whole lot of, BS that surrounded the game afterwards. I think, there was a great deal of respect that was shown for Jerry Collins and Sean Wainu right before the game. But I think afterwards, there was a lot of people that were, fake pundits that were looking into things and making things not really as great as they should have been. I think USA did a good job, but it was the BS that killed it.
And just like a typical 9, I think he's getting in trouble with the sir. You're getting a yellow, sir, for going past your time. But let me say this for those of you that don't know, because the big guy might get a red card here for some language used. Those pundits, not only was it terrible journalism, not only were they talking trash about our team, selecting the player they selected to talk about is utterly ridiculous. The one player they selected to talk about is probably the least likely to ever want to have any publicity about his rugby internationally or in the pros. For not only from a Rooney fan, but just from a New York perspective, this could have been, if they picked a San Diego fan and player and did the same thing, big fuck you to that guy. I got to be quite honest. And I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to give him credence on here, but it's shit journalism. And if you guys want to give me a red card for calling it out, you can for my language. But you know what, man? This is what we do in New York.
We're called the Rugby Rant for a reason, big guys. So
yeah,
we'll let it go.
So you guys know I was fired up about that. So I'm glad Mike brought it up. But I'm glad you brought up the fact that we can have this great atmosphere surrounding this big game. And I do think for the lack of what we had on the field, as far as if questions remain, our defense wasn't the best. Our offense didn't seem as in sync, despite those 2 tries. It does show that we can put on the big event, and we have done it before. But I think leading up to, having our announcement and then showing that we can have it, even in days where international travel is not happening, especially with the cancellation of the Irish game, is very, very important. So I do think on that standpoint, it's a win. And I think USA Rugby fans should really take a hard look at that as being the win for the weekend and not necessarily the gameplay or, whatever other extracurricular activities were going on outside of that from some British pundits who don't know their elbow from their asshole. But let's talk about the All Blacks and the Eagles, Rob. Your 2-minute start now.
Well, quite frankly, thank you, Alex and Mike, for talking about the game experience, because I wasn't there, so I'm not going to hit upon that. You guys did a fine job. I want to talk about the game itself. I looked at it, and if you guys go back to episode 73, I said, there were really 3 goals that I had for the team, and the first is organized defense, and we really wanted to see them put on an organized defense. I think that's what they were really lacking in this game. I think they need to improve that going into the qualifiers in 2022. I want to see more quick ball. Right. And I wanted to see attacking rugby. And I want to talk about this last piece a little bit more. I think some people have mentioned the fact that the USA were searching for an identity. I think if anything, the USA team needs to go back and look at this game and say, okay, the All Blacks have a blueprint for how we should play. And I'm not going to be Mr. Optimist, or I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up anybody's ass and say, oh, we can play just like the All Blacks. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'd like to see us take some of these principles that they apply to the game and begin to work on these for our structure. So number 1, they play really close to the line. Right? You saw that quite a bit. You almost saw, as from a TV perspective, guys that I thought looked like the ball was a forward ball, but they're running onto it. So let's run onto the ball at pace. Number 2, let's work on transition rugby, right? Turn from defense to offense. We get a poach. Let's work the ball and put pressure on the opposition. Pace of play. Let's increase the pace of play, work on our fitness, improve our fitness so that we can play an intense pace of play. And what I'm talking about there is something simple as a guy makes a break. We saw it with Nate Osberger when he scored his try. Guy makes a break. The All Blacks have 5 guys around him ready to receive a pass. Like, that's just about being in the right spot, having the fitness to get there, and being aware of who's around you. And those are things that we can work on as a team. So I'd like to see those things develop over time as we head into 2023. I know it's a tall ask, but that's how we should play rugby. That's the blueprint. Let's take that away from the game.
You know what? I think you're right. Why play like somebody else? Find our own identity and do what we need to do. And I think one of the things we do well, line outs to rolling mauls to score. And you had 6 guys on the field or 5 guys on the field in that pack starting that do that professionally, for 8 months to 9 months out of the year together. And it could just be that the All Blacks were just beating us in the lineouts. They were better in the lineouts. But I do think it's one of those things where if you got away from it, you run it, right? It's like a football thing. It's called keeping them honest, right? So if you're good at a running play, you're going to run the dive until they can stop it. And then as soon as they start stopping it, that's where you run the play action pass, right? So me and Rob talk about it all the time. We've successfully run that pop pass, that fake maul pop pass to guys like Hanko. And specifically, it's worked for Rooney going to Ben Bonasso, who's a speedster at 7. So, I think it's one of those things where I don't know if we shied away from it because we shied away from it, or we shied away from it because we just didn't get ball retention.
Well, I think part of the challenge there was, if you noticed, the USA as compared to some of these previous games, especially in the qualifiers, I don't think we controlled the set piece quite as well in this game. There were a number of times when I saw Dolan. I mean, he had his finger on the ball, but he wasn't able to get quality ball from the top and drop it down. He had to tip him back. We saw the one scrum in the first half. We had a nice shove on, and it was our put in, and the ball squirted out the back. So we weren't able to control the ball quite as well at those set pieces, and I think that made some of those things a little difficult.
And I do think we saw a difference in gameplay, and Alex and Mike might be able to back me up on this, because we had Nate Augsburger on the 9 and Ruben DeHaas wasn't available. So I think we only had one box kick in the first, and I don't even know if we had any in the second. And I think me and Rob were talking about it while we were watching the match, texting each other. There was a second one that Nate was looking to go through, and he kind of looks up to see if he has blockers and misjudges the ball and just jumped on it to keep possession. But they kind of went away from that possession box kicking thing, which is something we all felt, and I'm speaking for Alex and Mike, but I know Rob feels this way, that they shouldn't have been doing in the second half against Uruguay, because, open it up. So we finally opened it up against a team like New Zealand, and we kind of just got it ran back down our throat. But that's what happens with a team like New Zealand. So I'm going to come back with the question, Alex. Did you like the different tactic taking place on the field by the Eagles?
I did, and I agree with your assessment, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like I said, a lot of times being that military guy, I kind of go back to something. But when you're doing planning, right, for anything, I mean, those of you who've played, we've all played, coached, administrator, whatever else, or even on the business side of the house, whatever your civilian job is, like no plan survives first contact, right? And that's the great thing about rugby, is it's a very empowering sport, right? You do all the hard work during the week, and you send the guys and gals out there to go play, and you let them run. You let them run the show. And I thought Nate really did a good job attacking and trying to figure it out, right? You've got to be, and I think that maybe that's one of those things that's missing, when they go to do their stubby pencil work post this match, it's figuring out, like, how are the Eagles going to be more flexible and adaptable? Or are we going to just, kind of regurgitate the same game plan? And I really like that about Nate. Like, he was fired up, he was attacking, he was making it happen. And at the end of the day, like, Tyson's quote, right? Like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I think that's the person who made that one. That's kind of what Nate did. So I like that. I like the fact that, like, he was scrappy, he was adaptable. They were making it work. They weren't afraid to run at the All Blacks. Everybody, Mike made a really great point, because I was following some of that too. Oh my goodness, you would have thought that the Eagles were playing like the All Blacks, like 18th string team, when you've got hundreds of caps sitting on the bench. So I loved it. It's scrappy. They didn't give up, and I thought they were a lot more adaptable and flexible, taking it to who's arguably the best. That's definitely the best program in history. It's and arguably the best team in the world right now.
And by the way, I think Augsburger, Nate, showed exactly what you just said when he scored that try. Right, he turned to go make the pass, ran into, I don't know whether it was Savetta. It might have been Savetta, yeah. And then he went, no pass, boom, and I'm going to run it straight up. And that's how we ended up scoring. So, it just goes to show that, if you play with a little bit of creativity and that idea of, just adaptability, that good things can happen. You just got to be ready for anything.
I think, and this goes back to Alex's point, and this is a military thing. Indecision and no decision is your worst enemy, right? What's one of the things they say in the military, Alex? There's no wrong decision. So I think Nate's urgency he goes for a pass, he hits his own guy. So what's the next thing? It wasn't stop to assess it. It was go forward, restart the phase, right? Because what's going to happen? You restart the phase. Whoever's, whatever forwards are there are going to pick the ball to get you out of that right situation, and then you're coming up on the second phase where you're going to have the ball in hand again and kind of start. So I think that urgency he showed was probably, out of all the times we've watched him play, it showed sparkling here and did cause that try. Mike, my question for you is, obviously defense is the tackling wasn't there, right? We all know that. I don't think we have to say it any more than that. We saw that. So besides the defense, what is the improvement for this team going forward to play Chile?
I think it's got to be trust. I think while, the tackling was poor and the defense was poor, it wasn't just the tackling that was bad. It was the trust. There was no trust on the defensive line. If you're at, it seemed like, I think the vast majority of the tries that the All Blacks scored on us were right around the outside. And so that means that either a wing's being beat or a wing's, which happened most of the time, is a wing was cutting in to cover a tackle that, he thought his teammate wasn't going to make. And so you end up double tackling a guy and he offloads it. And then, they run down the line. So I think that trust has to be there. You got to, hope that, or know that, the guy to the right or the left of you is going to make that tackle. And a lot of times too, as a forward, there was a few times where I saw Henko, he was going to make that tackle, and it just seemed whoever was there on the wing just didn't feel like that was going to happen. And so cut in, left, 1 to 2, All Blacks out wide. And that's how you score, is just enough guys out wide.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about that during the season, right? Like in the MLR season, this past MLR season, about why Austin was so good on defense the first half of the season is they were completing their one-on-one tackles, right? It was one and done. The second guy is coming over to try and poach the ball, or hitting that offload guy, or setting up in the lane, so a pass isn't there, things like that. And I do think you're right. I think it wasn't just tackles completed. It was two guys tackling, and the guy being, offloaded to is just going free now, So I think you're right. So it could definitely be a trust thing. Hammer. So besides defense and trust, what's the third thing?
I think improving in the set piece play. Like we demonstrated that we could go toe to toe in the scrum when we really focused and buckled down and knuckled under, as they say in the scrum. And we can provide that stable platform. We had pieces of it. We show that we can have some quality ball in the lineout, but I think just consistency, right? Creating more consistency in those areas. And that's what I would like to see. And I'm talking from top to bottom. We seem to see over the international play from July to now inconsistency in performance. We played a poor game against Canada and Newfoundland, and then we come back and we play really well in Glendale. We come back and we play mildly well against Uruguay and Glendale, and then we go have a stinker down in Montevideo. We played really well, played well against England, and then turn around and came back and didn't play so well against Ireland. So, in the big picture, I'd like to see consistency, and I think on the pitch, I'd like to see consistency as well, but particularly in the set piece. Get those things right, get the things we can control right, especially when it's our put in or our throw in.
No, I think you're right.
I was going to say, I think that has to come down to, we have to play, or everyone has to be somewhat on the same page. I think Rick Salizo was interviewed by Sky recently, I think within the past few days, about, USA Rugby, because he's there, he's the New Zealanders insider into what, USA Rugby is. He's talking about, he's like, there's just so many different academies that are run by private people, not like a New Zealand academy. It's not like New Zealand rugby where top to down, this is what we're teaching. This is how we're playing rugby. This is how everyone is going to play rugby. So, when, we go for All Black selection or higher level selection, everyone knows what is supposed to be done. We don't kind of have that uniformity amongst USA. And I think if we start at a grassroots level, we can start getting that uniformity, and at least, we know what we want.
Absolutely. And I think, you talk about uniformity, you talk about consistency. And even though we didn't have our European internationals, we had enough practice and enough time to have that consistency in the set piece. But I feel like, and this is an example of the AGs, right? In 2019 and 2020, and the top of the organization is in disarray. And 2018 as well. And they're going through all these transitions. And what did you have? Bad performance on the field. The start of 2021 for the AGs, we were talking about it with Bryce Campbell previously. The top is now sorted. And what do they get? They get a 10-6 record. And if we had the playoffs we were supposed to have, they probably would have had a third slot and could be fighting for a place in the semifinal, right? so that leads into the next question. Now, on the fan zone, one of our fans had asked, is Gary Gold on the hot seat? And there was an interesting answer from the Sabercats' Taylor Houghton. And I'm going to quote a little bit of it. And he says, it's time to go, in my opinion, and not fully because of the on the field results, but what has Gary Gold done to expand the knowledge of current coaches in place, specifically in the high school age group? If Gary Gold is to be let go, then it should be on the grounds of lack of development in the leadership on the lower level of coaches. But maybe that's a USA Rugby responsibility. I don't know. He goes on to kind of clarify his position about the lack of knowledge in high school coaches and even some college coaches on positioning, defensive positioning, different ways we do ball in hand in the upper levels, right? And then he goes on to say, I mean, outside of test windows, where is Gary Gold and what is he doing? So we don't know. Maybe he is going around and he is teaching these classes and things like that. What I do know is, recently USA Rugby lost a coach due to nothing but unfortunate bad luck and personal situation where he had to go back home to Ireland. My friend Greg McWilliams, and he goes to Ireland, and now he's already being named the head of the Irish women's national team. There's a reason for that. He learned under Gary Gold in America in that system, coaching at Yale, coaching at Rooney, being the attack coach for USA. So, I mean, I do think at the upper levels, obviously Gary Gold is molding the coaching staff, Sean Pittman, things like that. But, maybe it does, at least there should be an answer as to what does he do outside of that? How does he have that level drip down as the national coach? So my question to everybody, we'll start with Alex, then Mike, and then Rob. Is Gary Gold on the hot seat after this performance against the All Blacks?
I think that's 100%. It's got to be 100% in every fan's mind, and I would hope at the higher level, right? And once again, who am I? I'm a lower level henchman. I don't even have a nickname. So I think the biggest part of it is sure, but who's qualified to say yes or no, whatever else. It's like the timing of this. It's the perfect storm, right? The bankruptcy, the World Cup bid, MLR is growing, and Mike, I think we've all kind of touched on a little bit. My big thing is grassroots. You mentioned high school. I mentioned transparency. I think there's so many stovepipes going on right now that it's a big, the information's not coming together. It's not getting disseminated, and someone's not taking the best practices and pushing it down to whether it's the MLR academies, whether it's just pushing it down. Like, listen, you might be in Higgs Knuckle, Arkansas, and not have an academy near you. So, like, how does that coach get the information? Hopefully not paying $25 or $50 or $75. That's information. Like, if you got the secret wrestling rugby, move, let's get that to all the coaches. Mm-hmm. Tell us what you want us to do, because like Nate scoring that try with his hands raised like that, that's the poster that needs to be in our kids' bedrooms. You know what I mean? Not pictures of guys doing the haka. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like what you said is like, it's time to hold Gary Gold accountable. I'm a fan of USA Rugby 100%, but I think anybody that's a USA Rugby fan, anybody that wants to see us be a top tier, the USA be a top tier nation, has to demand that. And it starts with accountability and transparency at that level. Yeah. What's his schedule like? What's his day to day like? How do I get to, is there Ask Gary Gold Q&A that we can pop up once a month for the coaches or the fans or whatever?
Yeah, I wonder what that access is. And it's funny because you have guys, former Eagles, our buddy Dave Fee, our buddy Mike Petrie, our buddy Dan Lyle, who go and they do the youth programs. Mike Petrie coaches high school. Dave Fee is part of the USA program, and coaches previously had coached in high school and college, and so it seems as though when guys are, out of their playing age and they look to go into coaching, they're doing it here. But what is actively being done right now by the head coach of the Eagles, and it can't just be on guys who used to be Eagles and want to help their community. It does have to be driven from a top-down approach, because that's the only way it's going to drip. So Mike, do you think Gary Gold is on the hot seat?
Absolutely. I think, if they don't qualify, he's definitely out. I think if, they possibly have a poor World Cup, he's definitely out, but I think he's definitely in the hot seat. And, I think Alex tapped on it a little bit. The rugby world and the rugby community in the United States is very, very small. You go around anywhere and you're, no more than 6 degrees of separation between someone incredibly famous within the world rugby, community, or the USA rugby community. And that being said, to be able to, reach out to Gary Gold shouldn't be, so hard. I shouldn't have to, fight to be able to reach out and ask him questions. And he should be able to, give and help out youth programs in grassroots rugby. When I coach my team, the Albany Bootleggers, even though we're an outlaw, D nothing, beer league team, I'm the most of the stuff I'm learning from is YouTube and Instagram. And I'm watching, people coaching stuff and giving, tips for, drills and stuff like that. That shouldn't necessarily be the thing. We should be able to have access to, coaches and be able to, bounce ideas off. And there should be a greater coaching community. And so I think, if that's on him or if that's on USA Rugby, I'm not sure. I definitely know that at some point he's got to step up, and there has to be some plan that's made up to, for all the USA players and all the feeder teams that are coming in through the MLR to say, this is what we want done, so that when they come to camp, they, there's the expectation, they know how we're playing, and we can move forward. And so everyone's prepared. And so I think that's on him. If he's not doing that, he's failing USA Rugby.
And here's the problem is we don't know if he's doing that because USA Rugby doesn't friggin' publicize anything.
Nope.
So it could just be a perception issue, right? Like this could all be bullshit and all of our opinions could be bullshit and Taylor's comment could be bullshit, not because he didn't do it or he did it a different way, but they don't advertise that they're doing it. So I feel like if he's doing it, you should be throwing it out there. This is why we have social media. Why are you using your social media to only show certain players looking at the haka? Like if he's out in the community, show it. So put some good faith. We've had good faith into USAR through their entire bankruptcy, through this contract with Flow Rugby that no fan likes, right? That's all we do is get complaints. We've put good faith in the fact that our on-field product seems to be in disarray sometimes. So they should, in good faith, be showing us what they're doing outside the community. Rob, is Gary Gold on the hot seat?
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say my question is why is this question being asked now? Right? Why wouldn't it have been asked 2 weeks ago? I mean, is it really fair to ask the question now after playing the All Blacks? I mean, you're talking about the number one team perennially in the world for the last 100 years. And we're going to put, all of a sudden this loss sends us into overdrive about whether or not he's doing the job he needs to do. Now, hold on. Okay. Here's the thing. I think the onus and the questions need to be asked of the USAR, right? Because in order for him to do all those things that we want him to do, A, he's got to have a staff, and B, you got to have money to pay that staff. And we know that those things do not exist for USAR, right? They don't have the All Blacks touring the world, generating a huge amount of income and revenue for the union as a whole. Now, I'm not saying that absolves him from any responsibility. I think there are things that head coach can do, but I think he's being handcuffed, right, by the union. And that's why I think it's really an unfair question. Is he under the microscope? Sure, he's under the microscope, but I don't think you change that, or change a coach, a year and a half away from the Rugby World Cup. I think you follow through with the plan that's in place, right? Especially when we still have to qualify, right? So, in my mind, I think we got to let him do his thing with the team. I think the responsibility has got to fall on USAR to get their shit together and get some kind of organization. I think Alex hit upon it just right when he said, what are the principles of play? Well, that's the first thing that USAR has to establish for everybody that plays rugby in the United States. What are our principles of play? And everything should flow from that.
I want to point out, it's not the score line, I think, that drove this question into the media, not from my perspective. And I do think my hot seat mind started when I was watching the Uruguay match while I was at PR7s. Personally, it just got solidified in this All Black match. And again, it wasn't the score line. We looked lost. Our defense looked less than energetic. The synergy seemed to be gone And that's not to disparage anybody on individual efforts. We're not talking about individual players who might have had a bad game or might have had bad plays. But there seemed to be a lack of cohesion that we have now seen from Rugby Canada and St. John's, and we know the issues and the European players got there the day before the match, against Canada, and then but again, selection time. Should Gary Gold be still playing those guys? I don't know. Why have an AJ McGinty come in who's been on the sideline rehabbing, fly in the day before because of COVID and all this other stuff, and then try and throw him on the field, right? I think it's more of, again, it's not the score line in the All Blacks, but that the lack of cohesion and almost looking like they didn't know what they were doing out there.
They are the best team at disrupting the opposition attack. Think about what they do with the breakdown and how much they disrupt.
I know,
the breakdown.
but you're pairing it with what
quality ball.
Rob,
all those players from top to bottom understand and know the rule book inside and out, so much so that they know how to play the fringes of the game. And yes, people question them all the time, like Rassie Erasmus does, right?
Okay, but Rob, my point is it's not the singular match.
And it's
not the singular match
to do that. I understand.
It's not the singular match. It's leading up to it. Look at everything.
It for us. I mean, come on. We were gonna be outplayed in that game. We knew. I
know, but my point is, when you have it in your mind after the series against Canada and the disappointment against Uruguay, and if you were thinking it, you're definitely thinking it now, especially with everybody talking about it. So again, I think there's a lead up to it, and I think this would have been the nail in your coffin to think that way. And it goes back to England and goes back to Ireland too. It's not, and it goes back to the World Cup.
I mean, they had a week or 2 weeks to prepare for England and Ireland, and all the MLR players are playing with their teams a week prior to that.
But again, that's selection.
Unfair to put on
it's selection. Dude, it's selection.
It's not selection.
Yes, it is, because
every one of those players is playing in the MLR, and then a week later they're going to England.
Almost the entire pack was made up of Rooney players. You could have had a whole back line of Houston players, and that's two different sets on the pitch that have some synergy because they've been playing and practicing in the MLR. And he went with a mishmash. And yes,
and what was the result against England? Granted, it was not England days. It wasn't England's first side, but they
okay,
lost
and we
by
won.
14
We
points.
won the second half, but we could have won the match if maybe the selections were different and there was cohesion. Because
Did you really think that we were going to be within 14 points of England prior to that game?
We could have been.
What did you think in your predictions? We can roll back to episode whatever it was.
We could have been. My point is, if you roll with the selections and you don't think the selections were the best in the English match. You think those were the best selections we could have done? We could have.
First of all, here's what I think. I think that Gary Gold in those matches said, look, we want to have a certain style of play. Yes, we want to keep it close, but we want to develop and blood some players into this team so we can develop our depth. Right? And that's the key, is to develop depth, because we know what it takes, and we're not going to win the World Cup, but we know what it takes to win the World Cup. It takes 500 caps in your 32-man squad. That's the magic number. Right. So how do you do that? You don't do it by playing the same guys inside and out, game in and game out.
No, but you're talking about you haven't played internationally since the World Cup.
Against those two matches? What do you have to lose? You're not expected to win.
You haven't played since a completely disappointing. Rob, you haven't played internationally since a completely disappointing Rugby World Cup, and you have two sets of players that actually fucking played together besides having a week of practice. How is that not instantly your fucking team?
They still got a damn good result against England
in the second half.
Right,
great. First half was a disaster.
Nobody here would have picked a 14-point spread in that game.
Rob, the first half was a disaster. You can't say it wasn't. It was a friggin' disaster.
I understand that, but they came around too and showed
they came around. Or if you have the right selections, maybe you have cohesion off the bat because you're already playing with these guys.
Scott, do you think that much like the New Zealand rugby has it, do you think that USA Rugby would benefit by potentially having selectors by just kind of leaving it to this? Like, maybe I'm missing that too. That's something that I don't never, because of that transparency, and all I ever see, all I see is what I see is what I get, what I can dig up. And there's a lot of great people that report and have better ins than me. But do you think that's something that's maybe missing from our structure, is having more subject matter experts kind of, looking the macro view whereas maybe Gary Gold's stuck in there and you can't really see, was that seeing the, it's kind
The forest
seeing
of the trees?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea, Alex. I think one of the biggest challenges we have to some of the things that we would all like to see put in place, from you're talking about a group of selectors to what Mike talked about in regards to some kind of the development from the grassroots and some basic teachings that are consistent throughout the United States of geography. Right, because what they do in New Zealand is they actually have selectors come from the various Super League teams and join in that selection. So those guys see how those guys practice with their clubs. They see how those guys play with their teams, and they provide that well-rounded view. Right, they see all those guys from both hey, they're playing against my guys too. My guys playing against other guys. They see it on a week in, week out basis. It just we don't have the geography that allows us to do some of these things. We have to figure out a different way.
I think the real question that out of all this isn't Gary Gold in the hot seat, or is like USA Rugby in general, are they in the hot seat? And they absolutely should. They have let this down time and time again. You had an opportunity to sell out or get close to capacity at FedEx Field, and they can't coordinate amongst the local unions to maybe push games back to a Sunday so that teams from up and down the Eastern Seaboard can come and watch the All Blacks play USA. And so instead of getting a possibly 60,000 or 50,000, which is what they were hoping for, you get 40,000. Instead of this great meeting of the minds of rugby and everyone coming out and playing and watching, it was lackluster. I was fortunate enough that Alex put together a great tailgate before the game. There was tons of great tailgates there that were around. But, this is the rugby culture that we want. And this is the rugby culture that we should be showing off. And USA Rugby doesn't do anything to really, support that or allow it to flourish. And this is something that they should be embracing more. Their main issue has been and always will be grassroots rugby. Part of that is because USA is, so large, and they have no, they've left it up to the leagues and the unions so much that they have no, true rule over it. But, they have to step up, and they have to do something to allow for rugby fans that play, in competitive leagues to come out and watch professional rugby.
Yep. I think, we can always go on a rant about USAR on any particular episode, whether it's an RPK, to be quite honest, or the Red episode. But I think you guys summed it up stellarly here. So it's really going to be tough for me to think about a winner. Mike going over his time, that kind of helps because he got a yellow card. But before I announce the winner, let's hear from our friends at Rugby Coffee.
Rugby Coffee was born of two passions: providing ethically sourced coffee and promoting the growth and development of rugby. By combining these two passions, the folks at Rugby Coffee see an opportunity to bring people together, and together we can make a difference. Rugby Coffee invests 10% of their profits in giving kids an opportunity to play rugby and projects that help uplift communities. These endeavors have been transformational in many kids' lives and uplifted and empowered these communities. So, in order to support that endeavor, we encourage you to buy Rugby Coffee. They have two great brews available for North America. They have Jouet, and they have Crowd Favorite. Jouet, a bolder, more European blend, and Crowd Favorite being a more American, more mild blend. So, whichever you choose, each brew has its own unique style and flavor. Get your brew and support rugby. A simple vision can be transformational. Rugby as a sport can inspire communities and bring hope and provide opportunity. Rugby Coffee, it's not just a game, it's a way of life.
Okay. And we're back, Rugby Rant fans, and that was a great little ditty from our buddy Rob the Hammerschmidt. And as you can see, Alex now has... Yeah, Alex has a new nickname. Alex, no nickname, Carlson. There we go. My production skills are on point.
Is that no nickname or no neck? Because he's.
So let's get on to who I think won. I think you all had great, honestly, different perspectives in your 2 minutes, rounding out with great answers on some of the questions and kind of going back and forth on some of the stuff. Mike's automatically out for the yellow card. Sorry, Mike, you suck. Typical 9 talking too much. Yeah, typical 9 talking too much. So it comes down to Alex, who was there, and Rob, who wasn't. I think it's a simple one. Alex, you're the winner. Congratulations, buddy.
Hey, it's just because I disagreed with you.
Rob, you should have. There we go. Rob, you should have postponed your wife's birthday celebration like a real rugby player. But Alex, congratulations, buddy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I couldn't have done it without Mike's support. Getting that yellow.
And guys, please follow us and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, anywhere you get audio podcasts. Follow us on social media at Rugby Rant Pod. Our YouTube page is live. We're throwing everything up on the YouTube page. Rate, review, subscribe everywhere you can. The more you guys do that, especially the rating on Apple iTunes, the higher we get in the Apple algorithm, and the most we get on Facebook and things like that. So please rate, review, and subscribe. Follow us, on all social media. Like I said, we do TikToks, and you can catch this episode on TRN every Friday morning, the Rugby Network app. If you guys want to check us out on Thursday night, we have the extended version with the second topic. And we just love doing what we do, man. It was a great spirited debate. I'm the big guy, Scott Ferrara. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. For Alex, no nickname Carlson, Mike the Grand Poobah Perrazini, and our buddy Ty, who couldn't be here with us tonight. We say thanks, and we'll see you at the next. And welcome back, Rugby Rant fans. And that was a great first topic. We had a lot talked about, a lot of opinions flying around, getting opinions from guys like Taylor Howden off of Facebook too. It's amazing what social media can do. So here's the second topic. So last week, the HSBC Sevens put out their schedule for 2022. And we actually asked this of Abby Gustaitis if she had been given a reason why the women are not playing in the Vancouver leg or the LA leg of the competition. Now, the women are playing in Langford, BC a couple weeks after the Vancouver leg, but they're not playing a Vancouver leg. So that begs the question, why? And why aren't they playing in the United States?
And they're not playing in the London leg either, the final leg.
Not playing the London leg. So why has their schedule been augmented and cut short a little bit is the question. We asked Abby. She had not been given a reason. I immediately call bullshit because I do think it's bullshit, but I'm not a ranter today. So, Rob, your 2 minutes start now, buddy.
Yeah, well, I don't have an answer. I mean, if Abby Gustaitis, somebody who actually plays in it, doesn't know, then I can't possibly fathom why this is so. So here's my rant. Yeah, it's bullshit. Here's what I found interesting. So in trying to find out the answer, here's what I found out. First time for women playing in the Hong Kong Sevens. Awesome. 3 new cities, Sevilla, Malaga, and Toulouse. Awesome. A unique system to offset for teams should they have go into COVID protocols, to offset points to make the competition more spirited and make those adjustments. Awesome. And Great Britain's going to complete in the first 2 legs, the Dubai legs, right? But then they're going to allow those national unions, England, Wales, Scotland, to compete individually in 2022 because of contracts. All those things were in the big news, but they didn't even address the white elephant in the room. Why the hell are the women only playing 7 of the 10 legs as opposed to the men? For a sport that often bolsters inclusion and, obviously the PR7s having women paid the same as men, and this idea of really making men's and women's compete at the same level, all of a sudden we have this stinker of a move by having absolutely no information about why this is so. Give us an answer. Is there a real rationale? If there is, fans deserve to know. But right now it looks like they're trying to cover something up, that for some reason women aren't going to be playing in 3 of the legs, and we don't know why, and that's a perception problem.
And it goes back to transparency, right? We talked about transparency in the USAR. We talk about transparency in the MLR. And now in HSBC, there seems to be no transparency. How easy is it to say, because of COVID travel restrictions, we would only have 3 women's teams in this leg, so we can't have the competition there. I understand it. You as the fan understand it. The players understand it. It's the time we live in of COVID, if that's the answer, but we don't know. Transparency, Rob's big thing. Mike, your 2 minutes is a go.
I was going to say, we have no idea why this is happening. It's incredibly stupid. We have to think, women's rugby is rugby. In women's rugby is one of the fastest growing sports in the U.S. and, outside of the U.S. as well. The more that we support this, the more that rugby as a total can flourish. When I think of women's rugby, I think of Sevens players. I think of Alev Kelter. I think of Alana Mayer, who was at the FedEx Field this weekend, taking photos with fans. Everyone wanted to take a photo with her after, all of her TikToks that blew up, over, in Japan while she was in Japan for the Olympics. It's important to grow the game amongst women, and that it goes to a grassroots level too. I'm just a grassroots proponent. So, these are the people that are buying tickets. Women want to see, women play rugby. Men want to see women play rugby. I woke up early, 3:00, 2:00 in the morning, 4:00 in the morning, to watch the women USA team play, whoever actually play rugby. We need to keep doing that. We need to allow for the sport to flourish. I just think it's a stupid reason. If they had a valid reason, they should say it. If they don't, they should own up to it and rectify the situation.
Wow, a scrum half stopping to talk and coming under time. Somebody better play Lotto. I think you're right. I do think, you have stars that are out there on social media. I mean, Abby Gustitis was on our show. She was at the PR7s. She was talking with fans. She was signing autographs. Nia Tapper signed autographs from, I think, everybody in the stadium at PR7s. They are, not only are they rugby players, but they're personalities that we need to have out there for as people who are part of USAR. With all the trials and tribulations we have on the 15 side. One of the bright spots is the sevens team. And you're right. Rugby is rugby. Women's, men's, it doesn't fucking matter. It's rugby, right?
I would say I know just the rugby nut that I am. I probably know just as many women's rugby sevens players as I do men's sevens players. And that's important. They're just as out there, just as vocal, just as great. They should be, on the stage.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Alex, let's go, baby.
Wow. That's all the points are kind of mentioned. I agree with, and I think the biggest thing that ties into it, because we do have such a flourishing sevens program in the U.S. and I get it. It's World Rugby, HSBC. It's a global game, but why the USA should demand that accountability and that transparency is the fact it's momentum. You mean we have this growing program. It's a good grassroots program. Young women are playing rugby at I almost feel as a youth coach that it's happening faster. There's the mainstays. There's always a good male turnout, young boy turnout kind of thing, but lots and lots of young gals are getting into it, and that's awesome. And that momentum gets squashed by taking two wonderful cities, large cities that are easy to fly into. That's got a lot of good tourist infrastructure in there. It's got a lot of good travel infrastructure in there. You just take those away. You're just like chopping legs out of it's a wonderful series, but you really take away that North American contingent and you just completely isolate, right? Because I mean, we're talking about USA Rugby and that transparency. Like we didn't even get to bring in the kind of Canadian, opinion of it too, which is now you've just kind of chopped that whole leg off. You chopped all of North America out of that series. And yeah, if it's a legit reason, we've all been playing this game or been around this game long enough. We're used to kind of being told to color and doing it and pressing the I believe button. But right now we're just all sitting here twiddling our thumbs, waiting for, the claw to come down and give us some word.
Absolutely. And, it's two separate issues, right? It's USA having no leg and Canada, not the men and the women being split between Vancouver and Langford. And again, not really sure why they're split. And in my opinion, that hurts the men's and the women's game, not having them together, right? Because what's more likely? If I got to tell my wife, hey, I got to schedule 2 weeks of rugby that I need to go up to Canada to watch this because I want to watch the men's and the women's. And now I got to pick which one I got to do, right? So that's splitting the audience in half, because do I want to see the women's? Do I want to see the men's? Who have I seen more? Who have I seen less? It's just kind of dividing your audience where usually it's a day full of rugby on both, right? It's a weekend of rugby on both sides. Having nothing in the U.S. is probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You just went from having an Olympic cycle where one of your rugby Olympians was trending on one of the hottest social media networks for 2 friggin' weeks to the PR7s where you had another star, Nia Tapper, out there the entire for all over social media, Lev Kelter all over social media, Katie Johnson all over social media, Abby Gustitis all over social media to roll into 2022 to say, oh, by the way, we're not doing anything in the United States. So now we're going to have to watch replays because let's be honest, I'm not staying up to watch, the Dubai and all those legs. I have to watch the replays. I'm just, I'm a person. I gotta, do what I gotta do. And then the one time I can watch it and, really swing it, if they're in LA and Vancouver, you're kind of screwing me on it, and that's where I feel like you see what PR7s is doing. And there's no way HSBC doesn't see PR7s as competition. And one of their main tenets was paying everybody equally. And if there was enough players available, they were going to have 6 women's teams, just like they had 6 men's team. But due to injury and selections for the United States women's team, 15s team, that went into camp, they had to cut it to 4. So you would have had 6. So everything was going to be equal in PR7s. And you see that model is happening in the States where, again, we're starting to grow. We're that sleeping giant of rugby. And in 7s, I think we've surpassed that, compared to the 15 side as far as audience. How do you not see that?
I was just going to say, our men's and women's team, and for that matter, Rugby Canada and Rugby Canada's men's and women's team, they're much better in the 7 game. I mean, the performances are showing on the field much better than on the 15 side. Why don't they hold more sway with international governing bodies for 7s, like being able to dictate? No, hey, we need a LA leg, we need a Vancouver leg for women too, because let's face it, the United States and Canada. The United States placed 6th at Canada, and Canada was Tokyo Games. The Rio Games, 3rd or 4th place?
Correct. I believe they're bronze medalist. Yeah.
So I mean, why are they not holding more sway over and dictating when the women's game is played?
I mean, and we've shown time and time again, Americans show up to Vegas, right? Now, last year, LA was a little lackluster, but that was due to internal politics of travel restrictions in this country. People were rolling out the vaccine, and who was vaccinated, who was not. In this state, you couldn't go to. In that state, all that pretty much within the United States has changed, right? People are traveling. So I assume you're having these matches in LA this year. You're going to have the fanfare that you would normally get from the old Vegas 7s, right? So again, isn't that what HSBC wants, right? I'm not sure if you're going to get that fanfare in Dubai because I'm not sure what the travel's like to Dubai, right? I'm not sure what the travel's like to France. I'm not sure what the travel's like to Spain for Americans.
From what I understand and from what I read, actually in the first leg of Dubai, that first week, there are no fans on the stands. It's only in the second leg that fans are going to actually be able to come in and watch that. So it's kind of an interesting
and I wonder, again, how much, what's limited. And my point is being the travel restrictions not being there for the U.S., why wouldn't you put the two together? To me, it just seems kind of stupid. Again, there might be a reason. This goes back to our first conversation, perception. There might be a reason, but just be transparent about it. Just be public about it. In the time of COVID, we've learned that people have to adapt and organizations have to adapt. And if this is because of COVID and travel restrictions and this, that, and the other thing, just say that and we will be sympathetic towards that. But to take the women off the Vancouver stage and to not even be put on the LA stage, to me, is asinine. It's bullshit. And it's just setting back. You talk about how the USAR isn't fighting for this. And maybe, again, they are. But if I was USAR, I would have put out a statement already and say, we have been fighting with the HSBC about this. And this is what we want to do. And we want the women in the LA leg. And we've been putting our name out there to say, we're doing this and we're backing our women players. Put out the statement. Fuck what everybody else thinks. I want to know as a USA fan that you're backing up the players for them to play in the United States in the biggest competition of 7s in the world at this point. That's played every year, right? But again, no transparency, no communication. It's the same old crap, it seems, from time to time. So guys, I think it's time to pick a winner of the whole friggin' thing. So, Mike had great points in the second half, and I don't know if he overcame that yellow card, but he might have. He might have. Hammer coming in strong, but he also had the opportunity to go first in this segment. So I don't know if he took some of Alex's stuff. Maybe he was cheating a little bit. Not cheating. I didn't say cheating.
Funny, Alex won the first one. You didn't say that about the first one, and he went first.
Well, we don't know he won the first one, but he might have won the first one. I haven't decided yet. I know Mike didn't win the first one. But Rob is kind of Belichickian in his ways. So Alex, you might want to look for like a camera posted somewhere in your apartment or your house. But man, this is a tough one. As much as I hate to say it, Rob, I think you won this one. I fucking hate it, but I'm going to do it. I think You and Alex were neck and neck in the first one. To be quite honest, you're neck and neck in the first one, and I think you had a slight advantage. And again, not necessarily you're doing, just how we roll with how we do it. You got a little more of an advantage to talk first in this one, so you had some really good points. And I think you and Alex might have, you guys, you know how it is. Sometimes you get on the same wavelength of things. You're like, shoot, I don't know what else to talk about. So, Rob, congratulations on your win. As you will notice, I did not make myself the winner like Ty does every so often.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I do abide by some rules.
It was a little touch and go there. I thought you might have.
No, I would never do that. Although I do think my rant was superior. I would never award myself the trophy. Anyway, fans, thank you so much for watching. We had 2 great topics this week. Thank you so much for voting on the second topic. I really think this topic about the women's sevens needs to be talked about, and the fact that everybody's still hot about the ABs. I don't want this topic to get lost. I'm a big proponent of the women's game. We play better in women's sevens than we do in men's. Let's be honest, right? They've been a little bit more successful than the men, and they play great rugby. And I feel like they're, in my personal opinion, they're kind of being flushed down the toilet in 2022, and that's not right. But anyway, fans, thank you so much for watching. I'm Scott, the Big Guy Ferrara. That's Rob, the Hammer Hammerschmidt. For our buddies, Alex, no nickname Carlson, or no neck Carlson, as Rob likes to call him, Mike the Grand Poobah Perrazini, and our buddy Ty Braga. Please. We love having you guys, and we'll see you at the next.